In front of my entire family, my parents handed my younger sister the keys to a brand new house. Then they turned to me, smiled, and gave me a cheap gym membership. My mother laughed and said, "Maybe lose a little weight." Everyone laughed with her. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just humiliation. It was a warning. And I didn't understand it yet. I'm Evelyn Carter, 33 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, where I work as a data analyst for a mid-sized tech company. I pay my own rent, manage my own life, and build everything I have without help. But in my family, that never mattered. The Carters live in Boise, Idaho. On the outside, we look like a normal, respectable American family. Church on Sundays, holiday dinners, group photos posted with captions about love and gratitude. Inside, there has always been a hierarchy. My younger sister, Madison, was the miracle child, the one who needed support, the one who had so much potential. Every mistake she made was explained away. Every problem became an emergency everyone else had to solve. I was the opposite, the independent one, which really meant the one who didn't get help. So when my parents threw a graduation party for Madison, I already knew what my role would be. Show up, smile, clap. Don't expect anything. The party was held in my parents' backyard. White folding chairs, string lights, a banner that read, "Congratulations, Madison," in gold letters. Our relatives flew in, neighbors stopped by. Everyone had a drink in their hand and a story about Madison's bright future. Then my father, Howard, tapped his glass. "We're so proud of you," he said, wrapping an arm around Madison. "And we wanted to give you something meaningful, something that helps you start your adult life the right way." He handed her an envelope. Inside were the keys. A 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Boise. Paid for, no mortgage, no debt. The applause was thunderous. Madison cried. My mother, Elaine, wiped her eyes like this was a scene from a movie. Someone shouted, "Best parents ever!" Then my mother turned to me. "Oh," she said, as if she'd almost forgotten. "Evelyn, we have something for you too." She handed me a small plastic card, a gym membership. People chuckled. Elaine smiled wider. "You've been working so much," she added, her voice sweet and sharp at the same time. "Thought it might help you slim down a little." I felt every eye land on my body. My face burned. Madison smirked, not even subtle. I forced a laugh because that's what I'd been trained to do my whole life. I said, "Thank you." I hugged my parents. I stayed another 20 minutes so no one could accuse me of being dramatic. Then I went home and cried in my car. That night, something inside me shut down quietly and permanently. I stopped calling. I stopped answering texts. I changed my number. I moved apartments in Portland and didn't give my new address to anyone. I focused on work, on routines, on peace. For the first time in my life, things felt calm. Until Madison called. She said the house was more expensive than expected, that utilities were high, that property taxes were confusing. Then my parents called, then my aunt. They all said the same thing in different voices. Family helps family. I said no. That's when Madison showed up at my door. I didn't realize how quiet my apartment had become until Madison moved in. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. She said she was overwhelmed, that the house was more expensive than expected, that she just needed one night to breathe. She stood in my doorway with a suitcase and that familiar smile that always made people underestimate her. "One night," she said. "I promise." I let her in. That decision split my life in half. The first thing I noticed was how alert she was. Too alert. She asked questions that didn't match the situation. How long I'd lived there. Whether I worked from home often. If I kept paperwork organized or just everywhere like most people. She laughed when she said it, like a joke. I laughed too. I wish I hadn't. That night, I woke up at 2:17 a.m. I don't know what triggered it. No sound, no nightmare. Just that cold, instinctive jolt in my chest. The kind that doesn't come from fear, but from certainty. Something was wrong. The apartment was dark. Too dark. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant rush of cars outside. Madison was supposed to be asleep on the couch. I stepped into the hallway and froze. The light in my home office was on. Not bright, just enough to spill a thin line under the door. I stood there, barefoot on the hardwood, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. I pushed the door open slowly. Madison jumped. She was standing at my desk. My filing cabinet was open. Papers were spread out like a fan across the surface. My tax returns, my bank statements, my passport copy. "Oh," she said quickly. "I couldn't sleep. I was just curious. You're always so organized." She smiled again. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse her. I didn't do anything dramatic. I apologized for startling her and went back to bed. That's the part that scares me the most now, how calm I stayed. The next morning, I installed a camera. I told myself it was for peace of mind, for safety, for closure. I mounted it high on a bookshelf in the office, angled toward the desk and the cabinet. Small, silent, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. At 1:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I watched the footage with my breath held. Madison moved like someone who'd rehearsed. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look around. She went straight to the cabinet, pulled out a folder, and began taking photos. Page after page. She even zoomed in on my social security number, my signature, my employer information. At one point, she paused, tilted her head, and smiled. At my paperwork. I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up. The next morning, after she left to clear her head, I ran my credit. I still remember the way the screen loaded. That spinning circle felt like it took hours. Then the numbers appeared. A mortgage I had never applied for. A home equity loan. A credit card with a $20,000 limit. All in my name. The address listed on the mortgage was the house my parents had given Madison. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and slid down until I couldn't hold myself up anymore. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't unlock my phone. They hadn't just humiliated me, they had used me. I pulled the mortgage documents from the public records database. I studied every page like my life depended on it, because it did. My name was there. My signature was there. But it wasn't mine. A real signature breathes. It has rhythm, pressure changes, a beginning and an end. This one didn't. The ink was heavy, deliberate, slow. It was a drawing, a perfect imitation without a pulse. The notary stamp sat at the bottom like a quiet insult. A local shipping and print store I recognized immediately. My father's favorite place. He'd been using them for years for his consulting work. I didn't cry then. I felt something colder. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't an accident. This was planning, coordination, timing. They had waited until I was distracted, until I was embarrassed, until I was isolated. The gym membership wasn't a joke. It was camouflage. They made me feel small so I wouldn't look up. They made me the punchline so no one would notice my name being signed in ink I never touched. I sat there in my quiet apartment, surrounded by furniture I paid for, walls I rented, a life I built alone. And for the first time, I understood exactly what role I had always played in my family. Not a daughter, not a sister, a resource. And someone had finally decided to cash me out. I didn't sleep before the drive. I packed the documents into a plain folder and put it on the passenger seat like it was something alive. Every red light felt too slow. Every mile marker felt like a countdown. I drove through the night from Portland to Boise with the radio off, the dashboard clock glowing like an accusation. This wasn't a visit. This was a confrontation. The house I grew up in looked smaller than I remembered. Same porch, same mailbox, same living room window glowing blue from the TV inside. For a second, I almost laughed at how normal it all looked. How many crimes hide behind warm lights? I didn't knock. I still had a key. The door opened into the familiar smell of lemon cleaner and something baking, comfort weaponized. My mother's voice floated from the living room. "Madison, did you forget your—" She stopped when she saw me. My father, Howard, was in his recliner. My sister was curled on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing in the world could touch her. 3 people who knew exactly why I was there. I walked to the coffee table and dropped the folder. It landed flat. Heavy. Final. "We need to talk," I said. "And I'm not asking." Howard cleared his throat, already shifting into control mode. "Evelyn, this is inappropriate. You can't just barge in." I opened the folder and spread the papers out like cards. The mortgage, the home equity loan, the credit card statements, the forged signature. Silence swallowed the room. My mother gasped and covered her mouth. "Where did you get these?" "Public records," I said, "and a credit report." Madison finally looked up. She glanced at the documents, then at me. Not scared. Annoyed. So, she said, you found out. I turned to my father. Explain. Howard leaned back, exhaling slowly, like I was the one being unreasonable. We borrowed it, temporarily. You have good credit. It made sense. You stole my identity. Don't be dramatic, he snapped. It was for family. My mother started crying. Real tears, the kind she used when she needed sympathy. We did this for Madison. She needed stability, a future. Madison crossed her arms. It's an investment, Evelyn. Houses build equity. You're always so obsessed with rules you can't see the big picture. The audacity almost took my breath away. You opened a 6-figure loan in my name, I said. Without consent. That's fraud. Howard stood up, looming like he used to when I was a teenager. You're overreacting. If there's a payment issue, you can cover it. You have savings. There it was. The assumption that my life existed as a backup plan for theirs. I took a step back and looked at all three of them, not as family, as participants. I'm not paying a single dollar, I said. Madison laughed. Then you tank your own credit. Congratulations. You lose too. Howard smiled, sharp and confident. She's right. You're tied to this whether you like it or not. That's when I pulled out the last document, the draft affidavit. I spoke to an attorney, I said calmly, and a fraud specialist. This isn't a civil disagreement. This is identity theft, bank fraud. The smile vanished. I haven't filed yet, I continued. I wanted to give you one chance. My mother looked up, eyes red. One chance to what? To fix it, I said. By 9 a.m. tomorrow. Howard scoffed. Fix what? You pay off the loan. You close the credit card, and you sign a notarized statement admitting you forged my signature. The room exploded. You're insane, Howard shouted. You would send your own father to prison? Think about the family name. Think about your inheritance. Inheritance. I almost laughed. There's nothing to inherit, I said quietly. Just debt. Madison stood up, her voice sharp. You're jealous. Admit it. You can't stand that I got the house. No, I said. I can't stand that you helped steal my life. She flinched. Howard pointed at the door. Get out. If you do this, don't ever come back. I gathered the papers slowly, deliberately. You have until 9, I said. After that, the police and the bank get everything. I walked out without looking back. My hands didn't shake until I reached the car. When they did, it wasn't fear. It was release. Behind me, the house stayed silent. Not because they were dismissing me, but because, for the first time, they were doing the math. The backlash started before sunrise. By the time I woke up, my phone was already vibrating itself off the nightstand. Missed calls, texts from numbers I hadn't saved in years, a cousin asking why I was threatening my parents, an aunt telling me I should be ashamed, someone else praying for my soul. They were fast. Howard and Elaine didn't tell anyone they forged my signature. They didn't say they took out loans in my name. They told a cleaner story, one where I was bitter, unstable, trying to extort my own family because I was jealous of Madison's house. They knew exactly which version people would believe. At 7:18 a.m., Madison texted me. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. She sent a screenshot of my LinkedIn profile. Under it, one sentence. Companies don't like employees with financial problems. Just saying. My stomach dropped. In my field, financial integrity mattered. We handled sensitive data. Background checks weren't optional. If someone flagged me as unstable or under investigation, it could end my career before it ever reached the truth. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to erase me. I didn't reply. I drove straight to the police station instead. Filing the report felt surreal. Saying my father's name out loud, sliding evidence across a metal desk, watching an officer's expression shift from polite to serious as he read the documents. This is identity theft, he said finally, and the amount makes it a felony. I nodded. My voice felt steady when I answered, even though my hands weren't. I know. From there, I went straight to the credit bureaus, froze everything, locked it down. If they wanted to use my name again, they'd have to break more laws to do it. Then I went to work. I asked for a meeting with HR before anyone else could. I brought copies, police report, credit freeze confirmations, a timeline. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I explained. By the end, the threat evaporated. Professional spaces respected documentation. My family had always relied on noise. That afternoon, my Aunt Ruth called. She never chose sides. She never interfered. That alone made me answer. "Evelyn," she said quietly, "I think it's time you knew something." She told me about my grandmother's safe deposit box, one I'd never heard of, one my parents said had been empty, one that had been quietly sitting in a downtown bank under my name since I turned 18. "She didn't trust Howard," Ruth said. "She never said it to his face. But she planned for you." I went to the bank the next morning. The vault was cold, the kind of cold that smells like metal and old paper. The box was heavier than I expected. Inside were savings bonds, $50,000 worth, accumulated slowly over decades. Clean money, patient money. Underneath them was a letter. My grandmother's handwriting was unsteady but unmistakable. She wrote about patterns, about watching Howard charm people out of things he hadn't earned, about signatures that weren't his, about loans taken out in other people's names when they were too sick, too trusting, or too afraid to say no. "He will do it again," she wrote. "Don't let him." I didn't cry. I felt something click into place. This wasn't a single bad decision. This was a system, a habit, a way of feeding himself without consequence. I sent the letter to the detective. That's when everything accelerated. The bank invoked the fraud clause. They didn't negotiate. They didn't argue. They froze the account and demanded immediate repayment. The loan was no longer a family issue. It was a legal one. Madison's house went from symbol to liability overnight. The notice appeared in public records. Foreclosure proceedings. Fraud investigation pending. In a town like Boise, that kind of thing spreads fast. The whispers changed direction. The same people who'd accused me of greed started asking questions. The same relatives who told me to forgive went quiet. Howard called, over and over. I didn't answer. When the house was officially seized, I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I'd already said everything I needed to say. The image my parents had spent decades polishing cracked in full view of everyone who'd believed it. And for the first time in my life, the silence that followed didn't feel like punishment. It felt like truth finally catching up. Howard's sentencing happened on a gray Tuesday morning. No cameras, no dramatic outbursts, just a quiet courtroom and the sound of a life collapsing one line of legal language at a time. When the judge read the charges, identity theft, bank fraud, falsification of documents, Howard didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, as if refusing eye contact could rewrite reality. It couldn't. The sentence wasn't symbolic. It was real. Criminal penalties, a permanent record. The end of the career he'd built on charm and shortcuts. The end of the man who once told me rules were for people without options. Elaine sat behind him, dabbing her eyes with a tissue like she was the one on trial. She cried to anyone who would listen, about stress, about family pressure, about how she never meant for things to go this far. But she never said she was sorry. Madison didn't come that day. She showed up later, at my apartment, unannounced, again. This time she looked smaller. No confidence, no smirk, just panic barely held together by mascara and desperation. She stood in the doorway twisting her hands, the same hands that once scrolled through my private life like it was hers to use. "I don't have anywhere else," she said. "They took the house. Mom's staying with a friend. Dad," her voice cracked, "I just need help." I looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't destroy you," I said calmly. "I turned the lights on." She shook her head. "You could have stopped this." "So could you," I replied. "You chose not to." She waited for anger, for guilt, for the old version of me to step forward and apologize for existing. It didn't happen. I closed the door gently, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. The silence afterward felt earned. A month later, I signed papers of my own. This time, no shadows, no tricks, no borrowed names. A small house in Portland, 1 bedroom, sunlight in the kitchen, a creaky floorboard near the window that I noticed immediately and smiled at because it was mine. Every page I signed carried my real signature, the one with rhythm, with breath, with a beginning and an end. When the agent slid the keys across the table, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. This was what ownership felt like, not possession, not control, truth. On move-in day, I found the gym card at the bottom of an old drawer. The plastic was scratched, the logo fading. Once, it had been a joke at my expense, a reminder of where I stood in my family's hierarchy. I snapped it in half and dropped it into the trash. That card wasn't humiliation anymore. It was the moment everything began. I no longer measured myself by how useful I was to others. I no longer answered calls that made my stomach tighten. I stopped apologizing for boundaries. I stopped confusing endurance with love. Family doesn't own your identity. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to sign your name, rewrite your worth, or mortgage your future without consent. And no one, no parent, no sibling, no one, gets to live your life in your place. If you've listened to this story from the beginning to the end, thank you for staying. I hope it reminded you that truth has weight, patience has power, and walking away can sometimes be the bravest thing you ever do. Wherever you are listening from, I wish you a peaceful, warm, and joyful Christmas. May it be filled with safety, clarity, and people who see you for who you truly are. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real stories from women who chose themselves and finally signed their own lives in their own names.